first question I'd want to ask you is actually about the high street. Do you think our high street is currently healthy and successful? And if not, what would you do to change that?
I think unfortunately Colchester High Street is suffering like many high streets are. There's an awful lot of competition, big businesses, and obviously the online sales. Colchester, if you look, we have a very unique area in Colchester. You look at L Lane, the South Lanes, a lot of independent shops, but then if you mirror that with the actual high street itself, the high street has a lot more empty spaces. We're seeing shops closing, you know. So for me, that's not the kind of high street that we want. We have to understand that the high street is changing. What we need to do is make our high streets more about the community rather than just maybe being about big corporate shops and all the sales that that they make. I think what we need to do is bring some more social aspects, more community centres, drop-in places. Just maybe utilise what we've got, but make it maybe make that better. Realising that the high street has changed. For the Labour Party, what we would be looking to do in all high streets is make the spaces more accessible. So what we want to do is remove the huge costs, or not remove them completely, but reduce the costs that shop owners have, with their rates, and their to rent a space is actually quite expensive, and that's what's forcing a lot of our shops on our high streets to close. A lot of the independent shops are closing faster than we would like, and we don't want to see any of that close. So there's a lot more we need to do. We're going to invest in our high streets and make sure that they are the vibrant, thriving places that they used to be.
Of course, the leases are a lot longer now as well, and there's that expectation of, I think it's about 10 years now, that most shops have. Would you want to see that reduced as well in order to...
I think what you have to do is maybe not look at something as a blanket sort of, we will reduce this. I think what we have to do is make it suitable to every area. So where some shops maybe benefit from the longer lease, what we need to look at is what works well for Colchester. What will our stores want, and how will we be able to bring more people in to access the space that we have?
And what would you say is more important for our town right now? Is it building new homes and commercial space, or is it expanding or better utilising our existing homes and storefronts?
There's no denying that housing isn't working in Colchester, and that's across a few points. We don't have enough social housing available. We have, roughly, I think 5,000 or just over 5,000 people on the housing needs register. We have 120 children at least living in temporary accommodation. Rents are very high in Colchester. It's, roughly half of the average wage that someone will pay on their monthly rent. So I think we have to look at it across the board, and also about making it easier for people to be able to be a first-time buyer. It now takes 17 years to save for a deposit, and I mean, if you're in a rented accommodation paying half of your wage on rental costs alone before any other costs come out, how are you able then to save? So I think we have to make housing cheaper. We have to make it suitable for the needs of the people in Colchester. What housing do we need? And make sure that then we look at the problems that we've seen in Colchester with homelessness. We have a great Housing First scheme that I went to visit with the council, and it's a fantastic scheme. It's very sad that we need that scheme. We as a party want to eradicate homelessness, and we have a plan to do that. But in particular with Colchester, we have to make sure the housing that we are getting is the housing that people need in Colchester.
Now, one of the other issues that people in the community complain a lot about is traffic or congestion. What do you think about that, and how would you, say, mitigate those concerns or change the situation there?
I often refer to Colchester as the car park, because there are far too many cars on our roads, and we know that we have a huge climate crisis to tackle, and if we don't start doing that, everything else is irrelevant, because if we don't tackle that, the planet's going to die, we're going to die. But what we actually have to look at is making public transport cheaper, more reliable, more efficient, and make sure that the options for people in Colchester are much better. We make a better linked up cycle route, and we just make sure that people feel that they don't have to get into their car to drive. We want to make our buses greener. We want to make sure that we're meeting all those standards that we need to do to be able to tackle the crisis. But we just need to make sure that we can all afford to use the bus service, that it is accessible. I myself use the bus quite a lot, and I find it is quite expensive in Colchester. And if I'm not working at the moment, so I'm on a limited budget, and I'm sure it impacts a lot of other people who are on a reduced income. We have to look at how we can make other forms of transport more accessible, to make sure that we're not, using the roads too much with our cars and clogging up those roads. There's a lot of pollution in Colchester due to, in specific areas, a huge congestion problem. If we don't, there's no point in just making bigger roads or making more roads. We have to make sure that people get out of their cars.
And would you say there's enough options for public transport?
I don't think we have as good a bus network as we could. Obviously, there used to be, before Thatcher, that councils ran their own bus service. It's now we are unable to do that, and that's something that the Labour Party want to change, so that we can actually run a bus service that is fit for Colchester and it works for the people in Colchester. We need to link it up better. We need to make sure that the routes are accessible, and we'll not even go on to the subject of the bus station, or if there is a bus station, but we do need to make things much more accessible for people.
And now I want to come on to quite a serious issue, which is one of crime in Colchester. Needless to say, we've seen quite a dramatic increase over the years, and especially in violent crime in particular, especially with places like the High Street and small pockets in the town. What would you say the main causes behind that, and or what are the main issues in your opinion to do with this?
I think there are a few issues. It's not a surprise that we have seen a huge cut in police numbers. What we've seen is 25,000 police officers have been removed across in England since the Conservatives came in. But locally, we have had, a removal of all our police community support officers. We've lost a lot of our police numbers, and that has an impact on whether a community feels safe. We know we feel safer when you see police on the streets, but that alone, boosting the police numbers, isn't enough and isn't the only solution to tackle the rise in crime. What we have seen over the last 9 years is a huge cut to all of our public services, to all of our communities, whether it be education. So there's a limited amount that schools can offer, extracurricular activities, school groups, after the school day has ended. So that's all been limited. Essex Youth Services have had a cut of 69% this year, and that has an impact on all of the services that are available for young people and families. So youth clubs are closing, anything support services, probation services, all these services that we need to make sure that a community is thriving and giving people hope again. When people lose hope, they become reckless, and when people become reckless, they become a danger to themselves and a danger to those around them. We need to invest in our people, in our communities, in our public services to make sure that everybody has the best opportunity to reach their potential. And unless we invest in our young people and make sure that we are giving young people the best education, the best access to employment, and not paying poverty pay, we will see the spiral of inequality through poverty and then into crime. We will see that start to break, and that's what we need to do. It's a combination of, yes, increasing our police numbers, but also how we invest in our communities and in our people, and make people feel valued.
Now, you mentioned homelessness and how Labour has a plan to eradicate homelessness. Could you elaborate a bit more on that?
Well, what we want to do is make, I think, 5,000 homes available straight away, make sure that we can get people into safe and secure accommodation. But But it's a similar thing to what we've just talked about with crime. What Labour will do is not, because homelessness doesn't just end if you give somebody a home. If someone's been a rough sleeper for a long time, there is a trauma, there's something that has affected an individual that has led to them being in the position they're in. So we need to, and as what we've committed to, is investing in support services. So the person can get into something like what we have, which is the Housing First scheme. But in that scheme, you have access to support services to be able to, and linked often, I should say, to homelessness is mental illness. And we have seen a mental health crisis start, in this country. There is no denying that. And our services are basically non-existent. What's there is very basic, and it's really, if you're whether you're a danger to yourself or someone else, that's maybe when you can access help. But we know that early intervention is something that helps, before we get into a crisis. So if we have those support services like mental health services, social services, and alcohol and addiction services, we can then help stop that person from maybe getting into that cycle of homelessness again, and you can help people get into a pathway of stable housing and also stable employment.
So we've discussed quite a few issues there. What would you say is your priority? So let's say you're elected. What's your first priority as Member of Parliament for Colchester?
There, obviously, as we've identified, there are a lot of areas that need a lot of work. So for me, it really is a case of looking at people's well-being. Everything that I look at policy-wise, or I look at how things should be done, I look through the prism of well-being and think, how is that going to make people's lives better? So for me, obviously, it's a very personal issue, but mental health is something that is a very important issue for me, both personally, but also as an area of importance in Colchester. Without mental health, you have no health, you have nothing. So I think we need to look at mental health, homelessness and housing, but also then, and this is why the list gets longer, how our education isn't working in Colchester as well as it should. Our schools have seen huge cuts. I think there's only 4 schools that haven't had cuts to their budget, and that has a huge impact on the future prospects of the children in Colchester and the young people. So I think there are a few issues, but I would definitely say mental health, housing, education, obviously about safer communities, because we do have a lot of communities who don't feel that they can come out of their houses at night. They feel unsafe on the streets, and safety and security in your home is a human right, but it should also extend to your community as well. So I think we need to make sure that Colchester is safe, secure and thriving for everybody.
Al, just want to talk a bit more about you personally. So, what area of the town do you live in and why? And what are some of your favourite places to spend time?
I live in Shrub End. I live in the service family accommodation. My husband's in the army, so that's obviously how we came to be living in Colchester, but it's certainly somewhere that we're looking to stay well after his career is over. Colchester's certainly won my heart. When it comes to favourite places, that's kind of one of those questions that when someone says, what's your favourite film? And I think it really does depend on the mood or the sort of psyche that you're in. So there are times where I just love walking in Castle Park and just being able to feel almost so far away from everywhere. I love being around trees and nature, so I love being up around Lexington Park as well. But I think what's so lovely about Colchester, well, there are a lot of things, but in its design, is that there's so much history in all areas that you can go. It really can feel like going from one town or one place, when you move from street to street. So I love like the Dutch Quarter, but I also love just around St. Boltof's, just being around the Priory. There are so many lovely places. I think people can pinpoint particular areas maybe of heritage, but I just love being around the streets, just walking around town. And I actually love in the centre of town, the South Lanes, the project that's been working in Eld Lane, and there's so much history there anyway, but just the architecture, just knowing that the history is there and what has been before. but it just feels really eclectic. It's just lovely. There's a certain vibrancy there, but there's also so many places around that feed into that. I think they're so. I love Colchester. Like I say, it depends what mood I'm in to where I would actually go and where I'd enjoy. But yeah, it is. It's a lovely little spot.
Now, I'm going to have to say the B word now.
I thought we were going to get away with it.
I know. That's why I try and put it towards the end deliberately, because I
save the best for last.
I think it's very important that we cover all the local stuff first, because
that's really what's important, isn't it?
Exactly. We only get to vote for our member of parliament. Yeah. But I will have to come on to Brexit now.
I'll let you away with it.
So, do you agree with your party's stance on Brexit, and why? Now, just to clarify for people listening who are perhaps not caught up, Labour's current position is to renegotiate a deal within 3 months, and then within 6 months put that deal back to the people in a legally binding referendum with the deal to leave and remain also on the ballot.
For me, yes. In the short answer, yes, I do. Now, I have to admit, when the referendum result was announced, I did not expect that 3.5 years, nearly 4 years later, that we wouldn't be any really further forward. And it's just such a shame, what's happened throughout this 4 years has created so much division within our communities. And that's not just in Colchester, that's across the whole of the United Kingdom. And it's really sad. Having been, brought up in a country that has been a divided community in a divided town, it's sad to see divisions being replicated now in other places. So for me, I will be honest, I campaigned for Remain and I voted for Remain. However, I'm a Democrat, and I believe, as we said in the 2017 manifesto, and as we say now, we want to honour the outcome of the referendum. We did put a referendum, well, we didn't, David Cameron and the Conservatives put the referendum to the people in 2016, and however you feel about how that referendum, happened and the information that people were given, a result did happen. Now, I believe that we can get a better deal. I know that our Brexit team have been negotiating with the EU team in Brussels since 2016, and we can get a better deal. We don't have the same limitations that the Conservatives have put on, negotiating a deal. And, there's no denying they have absolutely created a mess of this, and I think they've made us into a laughingstock, how they've performed and how they've behaved on the national stage or international stage. So for me, the only sensible option is what we're offering, because how else do we get out of this impasse? So I've been speaking to a lot of people on the doorstep since the EU elections in May, and we hear a very similar message. There are obviously people who are very supportive of a Brexit deal, but within that cohort of people, there are a lot of people who did not and will not support, like I won't or the Labour Party, support a damaging Tory deal or a no deal, because what we have to do is ensure that any deal that we get, if that be the outcome that the people choose, is not damaging to our economy, our jobs, our workers' rights, our environmental standards, all these very, very important issues that we would protect don't seem to be protected in the Conservative deal, and certainly not in a no deal. So we do have maybe a little split, I suppose, on the Leave side. So we would say what we'll do is we'll get this deal, which we know we can do, and that's a credible Leave option. And that's what we want. If we're going to leave, we have to leave in the best terms possible. We don't just want to get it done for the sake of it at all costs. But also, on the other hand, then, we have on the doorstep people very angry about the anti-democratic approach by the Lib Dems, which is saying we're going to ignore everybody who voted Leave and just revoke Article 50. And I know a lot of Remainers, myself included, would certainly never back that. And there are a lot of people who voted Remain, I've spoken to on the doorstep, who said they certainly wouldn't back that either. So what we're saying is we're offering the sensible option. We're not saying to either side, Leave or Remain, that they're wrong. What we're saying is we need to bring the country together. And the best way to do that, now that things have become such a mess, the only clear way out, because Parliament is as divided as the country, is to go back, get the better deal, put that to the people as a credible leave option, and then you have Remain, and the people must decide. And I have to say that, and another thing, you haven't asked me about it in the question, but I will say that I firmly agree with what Jeremy Corbyn said the other night on the ITV debate, that he would remain neutral. I would remain neutral because of the fact that a democratic election did happen. Mm-hmm. Okay, there were either side, people say, that both were telling lies, but I think that it really should be up to the people. I think if we go back to the people, which we've said we will, the people must have that final decision. And one thing that I know from being on the doorstep is that Brexit used to be the really prevalent issue. When we went on the doorstep in the local elections, it was all people wanted to talk about. But now we're starting to see, of course, Brexit is coming up, but it's not coming up as much. So things like our public services, our NHS, because we have now seen the truth of what would happen with a Conservative/Boris Johnson deal, that our NHS would be at risk. And the majority of people I speak to, whether Leave or Remain, certainly want to keep our NHS free at the point of view. So there are big issues tied into Brexit, but there are also a lot of issues that we need to focus on as well.
Well, you actually answered my follow-up question as well. Thank you. So
telepathic as well.
Sort of coming to the end now. One thing I'd like to know is, I mean, you've gone over a lot of different points about why you think people should vote for Labour, but let's put it down to one. Why should people who have either, let's say, never voted, or just maybe never voted for Labour, whether that be because this might be the first election when they're 18 and they're allowed to vote, or just never had the interest before, why should they vote for the Labour Party, or why should they vote specifically for you?
Well, what I would say is for people to have a look at what we're offering in our manifesto. Our manifesto is fully costed, so every proposal that we have in there has been costed. We know where the money would come from to pay for what we have put in the manifesto. For me, and I mean, I have spoken a couple of times, and people know, my story, that I was very disengaged from politics. I never felt compelled to join a party. I was very much involved in single issue politics due to a variety of reasons. But for me, in 2015, when the Conservatives got a majority, I panicked on a personal level about people close to me and how the impact of a Conservative majority government would have on the services that they rely on to survive, to just even exist. So I have been compelled to be involved because I looked at the damage austerity was making to our communities, and I felt, well, you can either sit and shout at the TV or you can be part of the fight back for our communities. There's a lot of propaganda everywhere you look, whether it be on the TV, whether it be in written media, whether, it be in newspapers, magazines, whatever. People have an agenda. It's very easy to see things distorted and maybe have a different view on what we're actually trying to say. But if you look with your own eyes and you listen to people with your own ears, you can hear the impact, you can see the impact that austerity has had on people's lives. What we're offering with the Labour Party is a huge change, real change for our communities and our country, and to change where the balance of power lies. For too long, we have been at the bottom and we have just had things done to us. Our life has been, upheaval because of austerity. We've had cuts to our public services. Everything has become harder. Pay is less, rents are higher. Life has just become harder. Now, we can continue to have more of the same with either the Liberal Democrats or the Conservatives, who still believe in, a reduced service through public services, who don't believe investing in investing in our communities, in us as people. We as the Labour Party are saying it's time for change. Tinkering around the edges isn't going to work anymore. If we want to have real change, this is how we'll do it. We want to invest in people. We want to give people hope again. We don't just want to be existing, we want to be thriving, and we want to give people the best chance to reach their potential. Not an arbitrary figure where everybody must achieve a certain thing. It's where everybody has the opportunity to reach their potential. And the difference really is that we believe that where you're born, whether it be into a wealthy family or not, whether, whatever religion you are, whatever race you are, that none of that should make a difference. Everybody should have an equal chance to reach their potential, and it shouldn't matter where you're born. Any of those reasons should not be the determining factor in how you move forward in your life. Everybody should be valued and given the same opportunity, and that's what you're going to get with the Labour Party. You're going to get hope and, just a life, a better life, and a better life not just for you, but for the people around you as well. For all communities, we will all do better.
And Labour haven't won the seat since 1945. Are you feeling confident?
They haven't won the seat since 1945, and there has been no female MP either. So I think, that would be real change. We've been having a lot of conversations with people on the doorstep, and it's something I love to do. Whether people are Labour supporters or not, I believe that everybody should be acknowledged and everybody should have their chance to be heard, because if we're going to create policies that we're offering to the whole country, we must speak to people who are not either engaged in the political conversation or maybe who don't feel that our politics maybe represents them. But what we do, we speak to people on the doorstep and we feed that back to the National Policy Forum, and that all gets embedded into all of the policies that we come up with. If I'm successful, I should say when, but if I do become the MP of Colchester, I'm not just going to represent the people who voted for me. I would be representing everybody in Colchester, whether they voted or didn't vote, and that's the difference. That's why it's important to have conversations. And on the doorstep, I'm not going to lie, it's been really positive. There are times, of course, not everybody's positive. That would be a lie, and that would be silly of me to say yes, everybody loves me on the doorstep. You will meet people who are, who disagree. That's fine, but it's been going really, really well. And it really is a two-horse race. I'm not going to deny that. It's either Labour or the Conservatives, and it really is the people's choice.
Tina McKay, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.